Hi, everyone. I'm Todd Herman. I own a peak performance training company working with top achievers in the world of athletics, sports, and business to help them achieve wildly outrageous goals while enjoying the process. And on today's episode with Dove, we go deep into the world of actually depression, mental health, the mindset, the 6 inches between the ears, what people are actually thinking and doing to help them excel in life, and how a lot of times the pain and the shadow of life is where all of the joy is and where peak performance sits.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into the one thing in your business that changes everything. To find out more about me and about our company, you can go to FullMontyLeadership.com. So let me ask you, in what ways do you need to up-level your leadership? Well, here's something to consider. In the call for greater and greater levels of authenticity, have you considered your alter ego, what your alter ego is? Think of Clark Kent and Superman. If you had an alter ego, who would they be and what would they do? What has alter ego got to do with leadership and leadership development? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any past episodes of Full Monty Leadership by going to the Leadership and Loyalty podcast on LinkedIn or on Facebook. There's groups for it right in there. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. As always, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune in to podcasts. And we always need your help in staying relevant, so please get over there, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from California to Florida and Washington, D.C., and about everywhere in between. Also look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show. We're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also listen to us on Google Home or Alexa by simply saying play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down. Let's dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you've no doubt heard both my guests and I speak about the power of authenticity. However, if you've been a follower of mine for any period of time, you've also heard me talk about how few people really understand what authenticity is. I've spoken around the world on being purpose-focused in order to fulfill what I call your deep greatness. That being said, the social norms often shame us from owning our deep greatness, which is actually our most authentic self. Well, what if you thought about your most authentic self as your alter ego, as a part of you who wasn't concerned with the usual stuff, but was instead the most powerful version of yourself? Well, stay tuned, because our guest on this show is Todd Herman. He is an author, a performance advisor, and an entrepreneur. For 22 years, his training company, Herman Performance Systems, has focused on helping achievers and ambitious people in sports and business achieve wildly outrageous goals while enjoying the process. Todd is originally from Alberta, Canada. We were laughing about it before we went on, where he grew up on a large ranch and developed, as he says, a healthy dislike of chicken coops. Todd's company provides a suite of programs serving Olympic athletes, entrepreneurs, and leaders. Todd is also the recipient of the Inc. 500 Fastest Growing Companies Award. He's been featured on the Today Show, Sky Business News, Inc. Magazine, and even CBC News. Todd lives in New York City with his wife his 3 kids, and is currently, apparently, the world's worst ukulele player. And he's the author of the best-selling book, The Alter Ego, The Power of Secret Identities to Transform Your Life. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the guy who's helped ambitious people to do hard things since Justin Bieber was a baby, Mr. Todd Herman!
That's great. I'm imagining a massive stadium. Thank you.
You better have me, because that's what you deserve, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That was amazing.
So I always like to start the show with asking this same question, because there's all the talk about influences and who influences us, and oftentimes I think people get missed. And that's because they're not necessarily the people at the front of the spotlight. I know that you spent many years behind the scenes for many people, as did I. Yeah. But now you're out front. So this question is, who's somebody who has had a massive influence on you, on your leadership, on even your philosophy of life that we might not know or might not suspect?
So I had the opportunity to go in and work with the South African government back in the mid-2000s to help them build out a leadership program for their equalization of the workforce endeavors, which was, no essentially white person could get promoted in government before the management structure was equalized to the population, because of just the past apartheid rules or culture. So I was over there working, and I was working with this lady, Mantuka, who was the head or minister of human capital, which is like human resources essentially for the entire country. And Mantuka was the greatest leader I've ever had the opportunity to work with. This was a woman, and obviously a Black woman. And here she was championing this entire new sort of eschewing of leadership throughout the government. And her ability to navigate such incredibly hot topics that were massive triggers for such a long time between the traditional Boers, so like the white Dutch, and then young Black leaders as they were coming up who were, insecure, who were lacking confidence, were getting promoted over their former bosses that were white, and now they were struggling with having to lead those people. And her ability to just navigate those cultural sensitivities with a strong ability to not make people feel bad about some of the things that they did as behaviors in the past, specifically the white Boers. Like we were walking through the hallways once. I'll give you an example. So I was walking through the hallway with this gentleman in Becky, and we walked through this door, and this is in a government building. And as we walked through the door, a white manager was walking towards us, and he was about 15 feet away, and he yelled out, "Hey, monkey, hold that door for me." And so people talk about racism, and so I'm like, holy crap, what's going on? And Becky just, had heard it a million times before. What didn't really even hit him very much. But behind him was the guy that was walking, was Mantuka. And Mantuka heard it. She was about 5 feet behind him, and she said, "Excuse me, I know that you didn't actually mean that." And, we're all very much, so this is what she said, we're all very much challenged by this major shift that's happening inside of South Africa. And some of us can get trapped by the old ways that our tribes just do things and say things, and it becomes automatic that we just say these things. But I know that that's not what you're about, and I know that as a leader in your group, because he was a manager, I know as a leader in your group you don't show up that way, and so there must be something going on with you today. So if you need to talk about it with me, I'd love to help. Her ability to not make that person's identity get challenged. She didn't say you or anything like that. She chunked it up to something that was larger than that person and said, I get and I understand that we can all act through. She was including everybody in it. Anyway, she blew me away, and I had the great opportunity to work with her for about 6 months. And, it's almost not even close, just how much leadership I learned from her.
That's what a fantastic story.
Yeah.
Because we could do it a hell of a lot more of that these days. because everybody's offended by absolutely everything, which is ridiculous. And
Yeah.
at the same time, that is firing up the other side to be more and more offensive. And it's, I in my conversations, I've often said, it's not polarity, it's a circle.
Yeah.
And so if you go underneath, you'll see that one feeds the other. The left is feeding the right with its crazy talk and its attacking by being so easily offended. And the more that they attack and the more that they're easily offended, the more they feel like victims. And the more they feel like victims, the more there is a need for a hero or an authoritarian leader, which goes us back into the right. And so this is this vicious circle.
Yeah, that's a really, really great way of putting it. And I mean, there's so many lessons. I mean, you could do a 7-day workshop just off of that one interaction. And I mean, we had that actually changed a lot of the course of our work. And then that gentleman who was caught in that interaction, he actually came in to be a huge advocate and trainer of the entire program. And then he actually talked about that story and, what he did. And it created this amazing open dialogue between both sides and just shared stories and, broke down a lot of barriers. So
but we're back into what we just talked about, which is what is real authenticity. And real authenticity has its roots in vulnerability, and people don't understand that. They think it's some bullshit bravado that they can present that's actually not the depth of their being.
Yeah.
And so, I want to get into alter ego in a minute or two, but alter ego is two-sided in one that it's a presentation. And then there's what I see, and I know you and I have some similar philosophies around this, is that my alter ego is actually my better self. It's it's not the part that I put forward as a bravado. It's actually my better self that I need to bring forward. Yeah. That's actually what's calling us to what I call deep greatness. So it's a fascinating area.
Yeah, I did. It's funny because I did an interview. I've done so many podcasts and interviews this year and done a lot of media with this. And the most common reaction that people have had around the concept and the idea is, I feel like I've actually done parts of this before. And they always, and what's interesting to me is the way that people do it in a hushed tone, as if it's a secret, and it is. So because the stuff that we're talking about, and in my world is, again, I'm the guy who crawls in between the 6 inches of people's ears, and I get into the way that people are actually operating, not the kind of popsicle, bubblegum, and cotton candy ideas that are sort of pushed out there as the ways to operate, and they're almost idealized. And then what actually happens is, because people think that that's the way that successful people are operating, and then they feel bad. Again, it's that loop again, like you were just talking about. It creates this terrible loop that happens in society, and what it does is it creates a trapped individual, and then you end up not pursuing the things, or you feel like, and there's a lot of self-judgment around the fact that, well, I must be just stupid, or I just don't get it, or whatever. And I'm like, no, it's because for the longest time, spiritual traditions, leadership traditions, self-help, personal, whatever you want to call it, have actually been giving you a bad narrative, not based in the way that people are actually operating. And so I'm just peeling back the veil and saying, hey, this is what people are actually doing. And it's private. None of my clients are going to go on a press junket or stand in front of the cameras and the lights after they've played a game and tell them exactly what they were thinking on the field, because it would make them sound like they're massively egotistical and all that, like the rest of it doesn't build a good narrative. So they're going to dumb it all down and just, let you hear what you want to hear.
Yeah, it's interesting, Todd, because you and I originally talked almost a year ago, and then we bumped into each other at the beginning of the year at an event, and I got to tell you, 'cause this is me. I am a person who reads people very fast. Like, it's part of my gift. 35 years of doing this will give you that. And like you, I'm between people's ears all the time. And I know pretty much whether somebody is going to be selling me a bravado or they're going to be real. And it was interesting to me in our conversation, particularly about your book, Alter Ego. I was like, okay, let's find out. We have this conversation, and I bump into you for literally a few minutes at that conference. Yeah. And I go, and because I talk to my wife each day, and she, she's always, well, how's your day? And I'm away, and I said, I bumped into Todd Herman. She was like, who's that? So he's going to be on the show, blah, blah, blah.
What?
And
she didn't know who I was? This is so offensive.
Terrible, eh? And I said, and she goes, oh yeah, why do you bring him up? You probably saw a couple hundred people. And I said, oh, probably more than that, but yeah. And she goes, why'd you bring him up? I go, because I like him. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, he's a brother. She goes, what do you mean? I said, he is soul-based.
Oh.
I said, it's interesting. I rarely meet people who do anything similar to me. My very good friend calls me the actualizer. Mm-hmm. I take people through the journey into their shadow, into the dark self, to face the dark parts of their soul, because I believe that that's where your power is. Mm-hmm. In the words of Joseph Campbell, the treasure you seek is hidden in the darkest cave you fear to step into. Yeah. I'm the guided tour into that. I go there. I've been there myself many, many times. I go there on a regular basis, and I take very high performance individuals in there like you do.
Yeah.
People who are top of their game. And somebody said to me recently, how come you don't have amazing testimonials? Because I know what you've done for me. Mm-hmm. And I go, who the fuck is going to come out and say, yeah, I went here and I looked at the sexual abuse I went through as a child. Or yeah. I went here and I looked at the fact that I was a raging alcoholic who was able to function. Mm-hmm. Who's going to come out and say, listen, I was a full-blown coke addict and I was banging chicks on the side while holding a marriage together and looking like the good Christian? Yeah. People are not going to come out and say that. They're going to say, Dove was extraordinary in helping me to attain greater levels of success, but sure. Most people don't have that level of courage. Yeah. And I said, I do. That's what my life is about. I do that for myself, but I can automatically feel when somebody else is on that path. And it's sure. like freaking radar. And I knew that about you right away. So for me, it was kind of interesting. And I'm almost a dichotomy in the context of the title of the book, which is the alter ego, which people feel is a mask they yeah. put on. And for you and I, correct me if I'm wrong, but for you and I, it's a mask you take off.
Sure.
Is that a fair assessment?
So the mask, so that's why it's called the alter ego effect and not the alter ego method. The yes. Again, words matter. You know this. I mean, we're the only thing on the planet that creates our reality based on the word choices that we use. And so, I've been doing this, like you had talked about your experience. I've had my business since 97, started out working with like young teenagers, still probably my favorite clientele base that I've ever worked with. But, and then you graduate up into working with Olympians and pro athletes and then public figures and celebrities and stuff. And that's the one interesting thing with the book, that what it's done is, if you looked at my Instagram DMs, because that's apparently where everyone reaches out to you nowadays. So I have to actually log into there every day. And I'm not the best of user. I've got a pretty good following, but I'm not the best Instagram user. But I'm really big in the hip hop community.
Really?
So it's huge. Honestly, it's every day.
That is hysterical.
I've got a new guy with a new front grill reaching out to me, talking to me about just the power of this and how it's really making a lot of sense. And how they saw where they were maybe about to go wrong with creating what, I talk about in the book, which is a trapped self, because they were creating masks instead of using it as a tool to really reveal and unleash the stuff that's the real kind of best self, the heroic self, I call it inside the book. And that's the point of it. So, a lot of people use try to equip other people with tools and strategies and techniques that sort of, meets the subconscious mind, which is this, beast of an energy force head on. And when you're trying to take reason and logic and beat emotional self, that's very difficult. And so what I found in the work that I was doing was the most consistent top performers kept on referring to the fact that they would say, I take this persona out onto the field, or I've got this identity, or I have this secret identity. They wouldn't use the word alter ego. The alter ego became like the sort of overarching umbrella thing for it. And for me, I was fascinated because that's what I used when I played football, and I played college football, and I was a nationally ranked badminton player. So I was a good athlete, but I'm not physically gifted, but my mental game was always really strong. And so I used this whole alter ego thing, and it wasn't me being unnatural. It was actually me trying to bring, a tribe of warriors inside of my own mind. And it felt very natural when I did it. And then when I got into business, I did the same thing to get past insecurities that was stopping me from getting my business out there, because I looked so young. And I was like, the rules I was setting up in my head were that I didn't have 3 best-selling books yet. I didn't have 9 letters behind my name, with university degrees on the wall. despite the fact that I was really good with helping young athletes develop their mental game skills. And so to your point, it's both of those things. Whether you want to wear it as a mask to be playful, that allows you to sort of try on new traits and abilities and character traits, go right ahead and do that. I don't think there's rules in life on this stuff. And what I care about is, are you getting the results that you want? Like that, because I'm a performance guy. Are you getting the results that you want? And then we check in constantly, because for me, there is no idea of the self, because we're constantly unfolding. We're adding new skills, we're adding new abilities, we're showing up in new environments, we're challenged with new circumstances, new situations. So what's static about ourselves? And yet the way that people try to talk about you is that you're somehow static. We're not statues. We are far more like a flowing river. And so many people get trapped by that. You've said it. The whole idea of authenticity and authentic self. The words alone are so valuable, but they've become memes and tropes in society. And they become basically almost virtue signaling devices so that people can say, oh, that was just me being authentic. No, that was you actually being an asshole and lacking the skills that you need in order to be more charismatic or, more, a better leader. And again, I can just go back to Mantuka. Mantuka could have responded in very different ways in that experience when she was having that in the hallway. But instead, she elevated herself to it was like watching a deity, respond, because I was like, wow, that amount of presence to honor that someone might be going through some challenges and not immediately attack the person, because she could have easily been offended by that. Hey, monkey. She could have easily been offended by that.
Absolutely.
She didn't go there. She wasn't ruled by the emotions. It was just phenomenal to watch. And so, whether you want to use it as and it's funny that you bring up the whole dark side thing. If people are watching the video portion of this or they're listening to the podcast side of things, I've got Darth Vader's helmet over top of my shoulder here. And there's a couple reasons why I have it there. One is it's a constant reminder for me to stare down the dark forces, that I'm going to win. His head is on there as if I've cut it off and put it up there. The other side of it, though, is, again, to be playful with this, because one of the pathways to get to the zone in the flow state, because that's a big part of my work, is how can I help people get to that place? Everything I do has to be honoring that idea, because that's where all of your capabilities come out of you, all of your abilities, and you find a completely different performance gear. And so playfulness is a big part of this. Like so many of us take ourselves so seriously. The moment you do that, you start to trap yourself because your ego is now taking over. So my point about Darth Vader, what I also do with Darth Vader is, that's why it's really important to wear the mask of the dark side. If you're unwilling to sort of experience that darker side of things, then you're not willing to harness the power of it. Rage and anger are actually really powerful emotions. I've got a golfer in the PGA. He uses rage as a way to focus attention coming down the back nine a lot of times. He's trained himself for it, because for him, it's a powerful focus. Other people, it would wear them out, not him. So everyone can be slightly different. But I put on that Darth Vader helmet. When I'm about to write. I'm a dyslexic. I still have some stuff in my head that, could stop me or prevent me from getting out there. But when I put on that Darth Vader helmet, and again, it's me to be it's me to take the piss out of myself, as we would say in the Commonwealth world. And when I put that on, you know what Darth Vader would never worry about? He would never concern himself with the judgment and the criticism of other people and his writing ability. So I put it on, and it's just me. I'm typing away, and it's an actual working Darth Vader mask. It's got the changes my voice and everything, and it's fun. But boy, does it ever allow me to get out the stuff that I want to say. And, do I keep it on for an hour? No, I'll put it on, get myself into a bit of a flow with it, have some fun with it, and then I'll take it off. But again, and it's also there to step into that darkness as well.
There's all kinds of stuff to unpack there. That's powerful and very useful. First of all, sort of working backwards, this idea that people have this idea, and I don't believe it personally, I'd love to hear what you think, but I don't believe that success is serious business. I just don't. I think there's a serious side to it, but I don't think it's serious business. I think it's very often a playful thing. And the thing you've got to play with most is you've got to play with that part of you that wants to kick you in the nuts and shame you and tell you that you're a piece of poo and you're never going to be able to do it. And you got to be able to play with that and go, really? Okay. Right. And you got to kind of goof around with that part of you, because if you don't, it can definitely beat you down and become the Darth Vader with its boot on your neck rather than the other way around. So that's one side of it. And the other part of it is this. I am so in favor of owning your dark side. And it's the work that I do as well. Because I believe that if you don't own it, one of my great teachers was Parthasarathy, who was the dean of Vedanta University in Bombay when I was studying my different religious philosophies. And I remember showing up to meet with him one particular day, and I was upset. And he's like, "What's bothering you?" And there's this big news story in Australia where I lived at the time, and it was about this murderer who'd done some horrendous things. Yeah. And I was very upset. I'm an empathetic guy, and I was very upset about feeling all these things. And Parthasarathy looks at me and he says, "I have a new mantra for you." And he would, every time we would finish working together, he would give me a mantra. And for 2 weeks, I'd have to walk around saying this thing, whether I liked it or not. And there was never, ever, he was much tougher than me. There was never any explanation. This is what you got. Shut up, go away, work with it. And so on this particular day, at the end of the session, he looks into me and he says, "I have your mantra." And I said, "Okay." And he says, "The murderer lives in me." And I went, No. I mean, like immediately backed off from that. And I said, "What do you mean?" And of course, nothing. And I come back after 2 weeks and he says, "How do you do with the mantra?" And I said, "The murderer lives in me." And I actually got choked up. And he said, "Tell me about it." And I said, "I've murdered my own dreams. I've murdered other people's dreams. I've murdered people's self-esteem. I was 23 years old. It's a long time ago, but I can clearly remember that, embracing that darkness in order to confront it." And then he flipped it on me, and I don't tell this part very often, but he flipped it on me and said, "What do you need to kill?" And I went, "What do you mean?" And he said, "What is it you've been attempting to kill that instead of loving it?" And I said, "The part of me that hates me." And he went, "Maybe you need to love it. You've been trying to kill it. What have you've had this need to kill a part of you." And you and I both know you can't kill the ego. There's a wonderful scene in the movie Revolver, which is a Guy Ritchie movie, in which point the main character, Jake, kills his ego, right? And his ego and kills his ego. And you got this 2-second nothing. They're just looking at a flat screen, and then all of a sudden it goes from this to, "I'm back." And it's just this amazing scene, because you can't kill the ego. You have to embrace even that darkness to really step into the power. Where have you done that in your own life? Because I know you've confronted your dark side. You've confronted your demons. And I believe that those demons live in the milieu of shame. Where have you done that?
Yeah, well, just to go back to something you just said. So I've done like 122 or 3 podcast interviews this year for the book, and that little segment that you were just talking about, you've got the murderer lives in me, and that whole little analogy that you gave there, is one of my favorite moments of 2019. That's so powerful that he gave that kind of. That's so good. Because again, like mindset, I don't know if you've heard this before too, but I hear from people that are in the world of like training and coaching or advising and mentoring, and people lament about how, it's so crazy because people don't pay for mindset. And I was like, what are you talking about? I only have people who like pay for mindset, because the people who are at the top of the game know that that's the only difference that's going to be made between them and the other people that are out there, is the strength of their mind game and their mindset, mastering the emotional or mental self. And so I've got no problems selling mindset. I mean, I've built an entire training company. I sold one that was on that topic. So where have I had to face down that demon? 100% it was built into shame, or is born out of shame. I was very fortunate to grow up on a an amazing home with two phenomenal parents on a big farm and ranch in southern Alberta. You know, I live out here in New York City, like you said in the intro, but I was a huge extrovert, and I was challenged always by the fact that I was living in the quote unquote middle of nowhere. That's actually the start of the dedication of my book, was to all the people who live in the middle or grew up in the middle of nowhere. So once summer rolled around, I was willing to be a Catholic one weekend, an evangelical the next, a Baptist the next, a Mormon the next. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted to go off to a camp. And so I could go and meet other people. It didn't matter to me. I was like, whatever camp is out there, I'll go and play the part just so I can be around people.
So I will adopt your religion if I can get the hell out of here.
Yeah. If I can just get a break.
Get a break from the chicken coop.
Yeah, 100%. Oh man, that place. So anyways, when I was 12, I was at this church camp, and you know, unfortunately, over the course of a couple of days, you know, two men had singled me out, and I was sexually assaulted and abused over those 2 days. And you know, that was so foreign to anything that I was anywhere even near around. I was always around very loving family and friends. And they did a phenomenal job on, you know, breaking me down mentally, especially you know, not that the first day was a great day, but the second day, especially, you don't have to go into all the details, but I was so, you know, broken on the inside from that experience. And I went home, friends had, you know, drove me home. No one knew about it at all. And I thought for sure everyone knew about it, but no one knew. And when I got home,
12.
I was 12. Yeah. And I was so worried that my family would disown me, that I, you know, was just dreading that for like the 90-minute drive home. So when I got home, I grabbed my duffel bag, put it by the front door, and my mom came out to say hello to the friends. Then when they pulled up into the yard, and I went into the backyard, we just put a pool in the backyard, and I changed into my swim trunks and then tried to drown myself underneath the stairs of the pool on where you get out. And that was like my first of many attempts of suicide. And, you know, and I made the mistake of not getting help and not sharing that and living with that shame for 30 years. It wasn't until actually about 2.5 years ago that I finally, got to a breaking point because of some other things that had happened in actually business that had sort of triggered this feeling of being trapped again, and it brought up all this terrible PTSD. And I dealt with it throughout my life, and had some, you know, pretty dark moments, and then, but it was getting to a bad point. And I've got 3 little kids, and it was a moment where I was picking up my 2 daughters from their preschool. We had just had our third, little Charlie. He was about a week and a half old, and I was picking up Molly and Sophie at the preschool, and I put Sophie in the carriage, and she was about 2.5, and I picked up Molly, and she was just about to turn 4, and put her in the carriage. And as I did, Molly's like, it's just a super sweetheart kid. She put her hand up to my face and she said, "Daddy, are you happy?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm happy." "Why?" And she said, "Oh, because you've been yelling at us a lot lately, and it's making us sad." And I was like, and I'm standing in the middle of Chelsea Piers, which is the largest sports complex in all of New York City. You know, people shuttling kids into gymnastics and soccer and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just an absolute puddle, you know, tearing up. And I remember thinking in my head, oh my God, I've given my kids secondhand trauma, and I am not going to allow that to happen anymore. And so that's what spurred on the process of me actually facing the sort of dark forces within and resolving that, that shame. But yeah, I mean, a lot of toxic behavior comes out of shame and guilt. Those 2 things are just absolutely sinister in the way that it shapes people's behaviors. So anyways, and now I talk about it very openly because I didn't do that. And there's nothing to be shameful about. It doesn't define me by any stretch of the imagination. But what it did though, in the end, you know, through the facing it down and getting proper therapy and other treatments that I'd used, I saw just the superpower that thing gave me. That's the key thing. There was a superpower that was born in that moment. And that's what gives me my ability to work with people at deep levels. Now, I don't do therapy with people. I got to make clear. I poke around between the 6 inches of the ears to help people navigate their mindset better, but I am not qualified to do that. But when I do find those things, in that moment, I do have skills, but then I refer off to many of the countless, world-class individuals that I get to work with or are specialists in that area. So anyway, but it gave me that superpower, and that superpower is really being highly compassionate. And I am very much, not that I get triggered by this, but I am very concerned with the number of people in our influencer culture that try to pass themselves off as being experts on topics just because they've read a couple of books, or they think that just by breathing that somehow you're successful at living. Even the idea of life coach, I mean, that is a very, very loaded promise that you can be a life coach to someone. I mean, and it's crazy. Actually, this is actually a topic that I'd love to really highlight for this, which is, if we can go off onto a little bit of a tangent, it couples with this, but because of that experience, I mean, I have battled very severe levels of and mild levels of depression, depression is a biochemical thing. And I know that you've got an audience of leaders here, and there's no shame in it by talking, but I'm on a massive mission to talk way more about mental health openly. And I think there's more leaders that need to get into this discussion because, if you're struggling with, people use the word self-sabotage, or if you're struggling with avoidant behavior on stuff, or if you're struggling with, negative self-talk, beating yourself up about things, that isn't because you are a procrastinator. That isn't because you lack clarity skills. And that isn't because you lack mindset and toughness skills, all things that I could train people on, right? It might be because all those things are side effects of someone who is got a brain that is depressed. And I say a brain because you are not depressed. It's your brain, right? When you take a look at someone with a cast on their arm, you don't say you are a broken arm. No. You've got a broken arm. So when you're going through depression, it's a biochemical thing. It's a brain thing. The side effects of it though are avoidant behavior, self-sabotage, lack of energy, lethargy, procrastination, all those things. And I think it's really important that people who do work like that we do are far more transparent about that type of thing, instead of saying, oh, well, you need a workshop to go to, or you need to hire a coach, or you need to X, Y, and Z. No, some of you might need actual medicine or other forms of treatment. Now, meditation can help. It can diminish it, that cloud. There's many other things that can help, but sometimes you need another booster. And there's no shame whatsoever in saying that, you've had depression. And for me, especially you and I, guys who work on mindset stuff, we're supposed to be the ones who are, standing on top of the podium, or that's the expectation. I'm like, are you kidding me? You think that the expectation of me is that I'm supposed to have every single thing perfectly aligned as a human being when no one has ever experienced that? That's silly. I have skills that I train people on, and I'm really freaking good at it. But I also know that there are guardrails I've got, and I refuse to go and play in a space that I am not qualified in going and playing in.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, what you're talking about there is very important. It's a big part of the work that I do because
So why is that? But why do you think there is this stigma around it? Or why do you think that actually, maybe another question is, why do you think that high achieving people or type A individuals can have a propensity? Because I've got the data in my world. They have a propensity to find themselves in these spaces.
I can answer that because it is a big part of the work that we do. So as you know, all human beings are traumatized. I don't care who you are. Everybody got traumatized. You don't get through life without trauma. That's what happens. And through that, you develop all kinds of coping mechanisms, and some of those become tools and skills, and they help you to grow. And some of them become massive weights on your shoulder and just grind you into the ground. But what I know is this: first and foremost, nobody is objective in a subjective reality. That's where we have to start. you are incapable of describing the water when you're a fish.
Yeah.
Nobody is objective in their subjective reality. You need somebody who can stand on the outside and look in. Now, second thing, like you, I'm dealing with people who are way more successful than I am. I always say, I don't own a multi-generational, multi-billion-dollar family business, but I guide them. I've not been a gold medalist in the Olympics, but I guide them. I've not stood on a Grammy stage, but I guide them. I haven't run a Fortune 500 company, but I guide them. And why? Because I have the objectivity you don't have. That's number one. I have a set of skills, which is another one. And the other thing is this. I am in the niche that I'm in, and I believe this about you too, excuse me, Todd, is that I believe we are the best in the world at what we do. And I say, you can throw Tony Robbins at me, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter. It's not, Tony's marvelous at what Tony does, right? It's not the same. What I do, I'm the best in the world at. And what I know is the people I work with are usually the best in the world at what they do. So what is the common denominator? And I say every single time, it's your shit that's the common denominator. Because we drive to overcompensate from that crap inside of our head that got in there that said, you're not as good because you were sexually molested. You're not as good because your dad was an asshole. You're not as good because you weren't loved by your mother. You're not as good because you were poverty stricken as a child. You're not as good because you lived in chicken shit for your life.
Yeah.
And so you're not quite as good. You don't have as many PhDs. And so you get all these not as good as, and so there's an overcompensation in another area. And the gift of that is amazing because you become world class, but you will never, ever find joy there. You'll find success, but success is very different from joy and fulfillment and living a purpose-driven legacy life, which is what I teach people to do.
Yeah.
And for me, and this is to sort of wrap it all up, what I will say to my clients is, the past is leaking all over your present and about to pollute your future. Your past is not separate from you. You have to embrace it and go to it and look into the dark shadow. Because when you do that, something else can happen. When you face the dark, when you face the traumas, when you do that, there's a transformation that allows you to do what you came here to do. And what that means is this. Your purpose, and this is the work that we do, your purpose was always there. Your purpose, I know your purpose. It's evident to me. It's crystal clear to me. What the name of your book is Alter Ego, because you built an alter ego to cope with your trauma.
Yeah.
That's it. And if it doesn't get a positive outlet, it gets a negative outlet. That's not you, that's humans. Yeah. It's what we do, right? So it's what we do. So when I look at my clients, oftentimes I can see their purpose. It's glaring to me. And they're like, what are you talking about? I don't see that at all. So there's a client of mine I've been working with. He's amazing. I mean, guy, he's a world-class brand guy. And we're having a conversation about his purpose. And he's like, I don't get it. And I'm talking about, listen, your purpose is not in your passion. Your purpose is always in your pain. If you want to find your purpose, you have to look behind your pain. And guarding your pain is your ego. So you got to confront your ego. You got to look at your pain. And there you'll find your purpose. And he's like, I really resist that. And I go, okay, I get that. That's fine. Yeah. But let me ask you something. When you were a kid, how did you feel? And he goes, well, I was a mixed race kid living in a part of LA. He goes, I felt invisible. I wasn't black. I wasn't white. I felt invisible. I go, what are you world class in? You are number one in the world at what you do. And he goes, I get people seen. That's it. Your purpose is always there, and it's driven by the pain. When you confront the pain, you become even better at it.
Yeah.
You become even more world class. And then it is driven from a different thing. It's not driven from imposter syndrome or inadequacy. Yeah. It's driven from a place of I want to serve. Yeah. I want to bring heart and soul and compassion to that. And that's what I see in what you're doing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's to your point there. That's why a big part of like why I keep on going back to it. People is like, hey, like the one thing to honor with this is, alter egos. We played with them so much when we were kids. Like it's so natural for us to do it when we're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, when we're jumping off a couch with a, cape on to see how fast we can jump or how high we can go if we're Superman or Wonder Woman, or when we're in the front driveway pretending to be our favorite athlete, whether it's a basketball, a hockey player, a baseball player, whatever. And it's all of us just disassociating from what we think are our limitations because it's height and it's size, and that it's kind of very physiological, basic stuff. And then all of a sudden we start to learn story and narrative, and we start to learn about ourself. And then all of a sudden now the stuff that we're trying to disassociate from isn't like a physiological thing. It's actually more of an emotional thing. And that becomes this, cobweb of just, entanglement in our heads. And so I tell people, I'm like, hey, you can try and confront this stuff head on. And I think the cobwebs love you to do that. The spider that's there in the shadow in the dark cave wants you to go and do it, because it's like, just great, you're going to get entangled too. And I've just found that creative imagination is that ultimate superpower that we as human beings have. We've got the ability to tell stories and tell narratives, but on the other side of that is we can also use that and leverage the stories and narratives of people that we're influenced by, that we attach to, that we like, that we admire, and we can tap into those superpowers that we think that they have, which then pull out our superpowers. And that's where the alter ego thing actually comes in. And when you know that, you can start being far more playful with it. And so the reason I come back to playfulness all the time is because that's the thing I had to struggle with for the longest time, because nothing in life felt very playful because I was battling such tough stuff between the 6 inches of my ears. But the alter ego stuff allowed me to play with life in a different way and honor what I actually was at my core. And I think what everyone is at their core. We learn these things. We don't come out baked to be perfectly serious. And yet I was a pretty serious guy always. So, I mean, it's fascinating stuff.
But there's nothing natural about that. And this is one of the things, he's a very serious child. There's nothing natural about that.
Yeah.
That is a learned behavior. Joy is our natural state. Yeah. Playfulness is our natural state. And oftentimes people really lose any sense of that. Yeah. And what I loved about what you've done with your book with the alter ego is you've had people embrace, just play with it. Yeah. Like, because you talked about playing with wearing the glasses, the enclothed cognition, and playing with this idea of putting on something, Winston Churchill's hat or, the glasses or whatever it might be, putting on the cape or the coat. Yeah. My wife has said this to me for years. I'm going to work, or I'm going to meet someone, and she'll say to me, do you have your suit on? Mm-hmm. No, my suit has nothing to do with my physical clothing. Yeah. It's the suit in her, in this, using your term, alter ego, and this is magnetic to the people who I can best serve. Yeah. And who can see the value that I offer. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's, that's something we started years ago, but that's exactly it, isn't it?
100%. Well, and that's my favorite thing about the stuff that I've shared in the book. And, again, there's a lot of science and there's lots of other stories of, people that have nothing to do with me, but just people throughout history that have used this. Martin Luther King, you mentioned Winston Churchill. Of course, there's Beyonce and Sasha Fierce. David Bowie David Bowie is probably, the individual expert at, because that's what he did for each of his albums. He would create a new persona so that he could find a new creative outlet and just see what he could do as Ziggy Stardust. Even David Bowie, the name itself is actually an alter ego that he used
from David Jones.
to creatively express. So, but the fascinating stuff for me is when people go, I feel like I've been doing this. Or, when you said that, I didn't realize that that's what I was actually doing, but now that makes so much sense. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm not trying to invent new ideas for you. I'm giving you the stuff that's already there. And then what I'm doing is I'm tracing it back to here's why it's happening inside your brain, right? Like enclosed cognition, this idea nowadays that, we can work from home, which we can. But people say, you can work from home in your pajamas. Well, here's what I know as a performance guy. You will under-index severely. Why? Yes. Because science. Because the phenomenon of enclothed cognition, which is, for those that are listening, enclothed cognition is that we as human beings, we attach story and meaning to the things and clothing other people wear or that we wear. And the crazy part is, whatever story you tell about that article of clothing, when you put it on, you will actually naturally, without even having to think about it, amplify the traits and abilities that you have given to that article of clothing naturally. So I've actually done this on stage with people before I even unpack this, where they come on stage and then I get them to go backstage and put on a Marine uniform or Army uniform. Yeah. And while they're gone, we have like little earmuff headsets on them so they can't hear what I'm saying. I'm like, guys, I want you to notice how different they walk when they come out. Okay. And then everyone comes out and that person walks out and everyone's like, oh, wow. And the person thinks that they're like, oh, wowing because of how they look in the uniform. And so they, they feel all good. And I was like, no, what they're awing and wowing about is how much your physical state changed because you're now wearing an Army uniform. Because what do we know? People who wear uniforms in the Army or the Navy or the Marines or whatever branch of the military there is will walk more upright and straight, shoulders back and head up. Because that's the cultural narrative. People don't even realize it. And so when you put on your pajamas and you work from home, good luck performing to your absolute peak. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, that is such a great point, Todd, that I think people have got to get. My wife says to me, where are you going? And I go, what do you mean? She goes, Dove, we're at home today. Yeah. We're not going anywhere. Why are you wearing a vest? Why are you wearing? Can't you take your shoes off and stay? She says, because I'm gay from the ankles down. I like pretty shoes.
That's in my top 3. Now you've got 2 of my top 3 statements of this. That's hilarious. Gay from the ankles down. That's so funny.
Right. Straight from the ankles up, gay from the ankles down. And she'll say, where are you going? And I say, babe, I just feel better like this. And it's not me. I know it's us. And we've all heard the saying, he wanders around in sweatpants. He's lost the will to live.
Yes.
And it's you're absolutely right. We take it on.
Yeah.
Like, when you and I bumped into each other at TNC, you looked great. You got your nice jacket on, you got your glasses on. Yeah. I'm wearing my jacket, I'm wearing my vest, and I look around and I see people and I'm like, yeah. And some people, that's their brand, and I get it.
Sure.
But there's something.
People have overplayed the whole Zuckerberg T-shirt and jeans thing, and it works for Zuck because he's worth a lot of billions of dollars. And at the time, it's been overplayed. But that power of that uniform, and that's one of the parts of the process that I kind of unpack in the book is just that.
Well, you talk about the white jackets, right? The white coats. Whether it's a lab coat or whatever it is, and what the person is told that white coat is, determines their behavior, their whole attitude, whether it's a painter's coat and they're suddenly being creative, or whether it's a lab coat and they're a scientist, or they're a doctor, or whatever it is, right? It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's fun. And so that's my responsibility as someone who's got the training and coaching company that I try to find, okay, well, what are the really odd phenomenons that exist inside of the natural processes of how we interpret the world or work inside the world? Then how can I take that thing and add it into a process that helps elevate someone's performance instead of trying to make up something out of thin air and try to bash it down everyone's throat as if it's a hard and fast rule like gravity on how to perform better. One of those that's been completely overplayed is the idea of affirmations. Affirmations completely overplayed. Here's what the studies show. People who are in a depressive, or people who don't believe in the affirmation, so you don't already have the confidence or the skill or whatever you're trying to affirm to yourself, if you say that to yourself, it will actually cause you to go into more of a depressive state. Not depression necessarily, could cause depression, but will put you into a more depressive state. Why? Because the other side of your head goes, no, you're not a millionaire. Because you don't have $1 million in your bank account. Like the logic side of your brain and that story goes, yeah, no, you don't. Or the critic, whatever, you lose. Where affirmations do come in and where they can help is when you're already confident in your ability and you affirm. What that does is it strengthens something that you already know to be true. Now you're just reinforcing it and you're armorizing it. And that's an important distinction because again, like it's just, I just feel really, well, I can't save everybody on the planet, but I do feel bad for those people who are well-intentioned at making change happen for themselves. And they fall into the trappings of, some charismatic leader or charismatic, person. They look good. They look the part, they play the part, but they have no substance whatsoever. I equate it to they're preaching and they're spewing cotton candy apples and bubble gum. And what I serve up is meat, potatoes, and kale. Everything I do, because I say that I sell you hard work. I sell you tough stuff. I sell you effort and I sell you difficulty. Why? Because the people I work with love it. They know that it's that hard work, it's that effort, and it's that challenging stuff that creates a moat around them because other people are unwilling to crawl across broken glass. I'm always like, no, broken glass. Put more of it in front of me because I will crawl across it. Just like you, like broken glass in the stuff that you were talking about before is the willingness to face down the tough stuff that may have happened to you. And while you're doing it, making sure that if you maybe hold on to this idea in your head, knowing that it is not you, it is an event, it's an experience, and it's a story that you've told yourself and it did happen, but it is not you. You've made it you. And that's the thing that's causing a lot of the friction or the challenge, but it is not you. But how willing are you to go back? And this is the tough one. This is when if someone would have said this to me when it comes to like my trauma in the past and said, are you willing to have a different viewpoint on that experience and unshackle yourself from the shame, the guilt, the dread, the anger, the hatred that's wrapped around it? Are you willing? And now that I'm on the other side, I'm grateful that I've got that experience. But as I was facing it, that would have been a tough one to admit to myself. But that's broken glass. I love meeting people who have crawled across broken glass in life.
Yeah, I'm so with you.
And again, this doesn't sound motivating to people, to some people. And I'm like, you're not my people then. Or
no,
you're
exactly.
you're avoiding the truth and the reality. You know that it's true. You know that is an undeniable thing. That the most valuable stuff in life is the most difficult and challenging. Yeah. Why? And why is that actually? That's super motivating to me. Why? Because I know that the version of me that's going to get on the other side of that difficulty is so freaking valuable, and the quality of people that are in that same place is more valuable than where I was before. Mm-hmm. So that's why, I'm saying to people like, why are you so concerned with this idea of your authentic self? We have many identities. Like I've got the challenger. I mean, obviously this is where we're very much alike, is that we're both very much challenger personality types. And that's because we're typically trying to break through the hard exterior of, high achieving, top performing people who have a lot of yes people around them, a lot of people who won't challenge them, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas for me, I mean, listen, I don't need to beg for clientele. I don't need to beg for anything. There's another person behind you that I can work with. So, are you willing to get punched in the mouth? Because if you're not willing to get punched in the mouth by me, then you're not really willing to break the ego that's there. So that, because at the end of the day, I'm here to help you get to a completely different level that you didn't think was there. Some of that is without the emotional resistance that's there, because you're pursuing and going after things, but the red line of your mile per hour dial it's in the red line. Like you're revving the engine hard, and but it doesn't need to be that way. So where can I find and release the emergency brakes that you've got pulled up? But I'm gonna have to smash you in the mouth a couple of times.
But that's the point, right? I mean, as a very good friend of mine, Mark Levy, said, what he loves about my work is that I don't deny it's about the pain. And he goes, nobody wants to say that, but I have always said, listen, I am going to walk you into your pain and you are going to make friends with it. And the other side of that is I have no tolerance, personally, no tolerance, not right, it's my way. I have no tolerance for people who want to reframe your experience. Yes, you can reframe your experience, but you can't reframe your experience without experiencing it. And people go, what do you mean by that? You have got to go into it. You've got to confront it. You can't step back and go, yeah, I'm just going to reframe this. That wasn't really, it wasn't really that, it was this. No. There is a whole company that is worldwide. I know who they are. Their number one coach in the world is my client, who I'm constantly punching in the face about stop reframing this bullshit and actually deal with the issue so that you can actually have a genuine reframe. But you can't jump over the pain. You've got to confront the freaking pain. And when you confront the pain, it breaks you open and reveals the magnificence of who you are. But here's the thing, and I want to put this to you, Todd, because you and I play so much in the same field, is do you find that there are, and I'm not saying we're going after them, but I meet them, which is the people who are enormously high achievers, who are surrounded by sycophants, people who tell them they're marvelous, who won't challenge them, who look all that in a bag of chips, but you and I can see, you know what? Oh my God, I can see the armor. I can see that what you're capable of is amazingly more than this. It's got so much more depth.
Yeah.
But they won't go there, that they are guarded, because if they're not, they will have to confront that darkness. They will have to confront that shadow. They will have to confront that inadequacy that they're feeling.
Yeah.
So they won't go there. Do you see that?
Oh, I see all the time. But what I don't do is, because of my personal experience, I probably needed to wait until I was, early 40s before I confronted it. It sucks to say that, because it would have been amazing to get rid of it a lot earlier. But I'm not going to push it. Now, again, what you do and what I do is slightly different. Like I don't try to force, like what you do is like, that's super tough stuff.
I confront and I go after it. And I go after it, as my friend said, Sergeant Major Compassion, meaning, and it's what I call as soul surgery. I have to open you up with a bulldozer often, but once I've got the bulldozer in, then I'm going in with the finest scalpel, and I'm just pulling out the bits that you don't need, because there's a magnificence within you. But oftentimes the thing that is guarding that person is the ego, and I need to break that open in order to reveal the soft, chewy center of magnificence and delicious heart and soul that's waiting, that nobody even knew about. And these people often, as you were saying, they're enormously successful, but their marriages suck. They're terrible parents. They're horrible bosses, but they've got the accolades. When I look at what was his name? The guy who got busted in Hollywood. He started the whole Me Too movement.
Harvey Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein. I can look at him with compassion. I can see a damaged individual who's been driven by whatever the frickin' trauma was, and I can pretty much guess what it was, by his trauma, and has had enormous success, and then has traumatized other people because he's not dealt with that. But I could help him to get that shit out of the way and transform, because that's what I do. So going back to earlier, what I was going to say, so I don't force people towards it, because I think that they've got to come to that a lot of times in their own time. Again, I'm here to help people with, mindset, performance, give them some real skills. And then through that stuff, they will find that sometimes they'll still find that they're like, oh, there's still this like chain that's holding me back. And that's where I'm like, great, I'm going to send you off to this person over here, and that person can help you with that. Meanwhile, I'm still going to help you move forward, because most of us don't have the opportunity to step to the sidelines, get everything all perfect, because that's not what we're talking about here. Get everything all sorted and perfect. I mean, I don't have that opportunity. Most of us don't, unless you're independently wealthy. You don't. I mean, you've got a life, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, yeah, we're okay. Like I could step away. It's just that, I get so much, juice and fire from talking to, awesome people and being around good people that it would rot me from the inside. I'm also honoring the fact that I'm a huge extrovert. I need to be around human interaction every single day, to just make the day super worthwhile to me. So, yeah, I mean, I just love this topic, and I just sort of bow to you in a way of you holding that space for people to face it down. It's not that it's really frustrating to me, but I'm actually really hopeful, and I'm really inspired by the amount of amazing people that have got platforms, have got money, that are getting behind the mental health movements that are out here. Like even here in New York City, where I am, Goldman Sachs is doing a lot of the stuff around this because, Wall Street, I mean, man, you talk about a wounded warrior group. There's a lot there. And the culture and the toxicity of it. There's a lot of amazing stuff that comes out of it, but there is a toxic performance that can be there. There's been some amazing work that's happening there. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in athletics and sports. The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, has talked about how for the longest time he was concerned about ever talking about his mental health struggles and depression, but it is the thing that has allowed him now to just be so much more free. Yes. And it's pretty hard to argue. And he's a larger than life figure now and all that stuff. So there's a physical look that's going to play into this, but it's pretty hard to argue with his platform that he's built for himself and how much he truly does resonate with a lot of people. And so anyway, I just like the conversation.
But I
encourage people to that might be struggling with some tough stuff to really pursue it, because it's amazing what's on the other side. And this is coming from someone who's pretty much fresh from it. And actually as another thing, because it can be a taboo subject, I would really seriously look into the plant-based medicine opportunities that are out there to help people face that stuff down. Because I was in the largest study on the effects of MDMA on PTSD. In the sort of common vernacular, MDMA is referred to as the Molly pill, and people think of it as the drug that people take when they go to raves. But in larger dosages, it is so powerful. And in my experience, I'm going to talk about me because I'm not the expert on it. I have a lot of experts around me, but it was was it ever a speeding train to help me move through that stuff that would have maybe never been able to get me to the other side through talk therapy or something like that. But it was so amazing. It just gave me this great perspective, allowed me to go back to those moments, experience them in a different way, experience myself in a different way, to your point about experiencing it. And then it unshackled me from it, and it was phenomenal. And, and it's not over yet. There's still other sides. Now I'm, pursuing stuff around psilocybin. Because there's a great research study that just came out of UPenn. I think it's UPenn. It was just in this month's issue of Men's Journal magazine. So the December issue of Men's Journal magazine, the Gadgets and Gears one, the 2019 version. And it talked about just the stats on psilocybin and its effects specifically on people that are going through or depression, because kind of like the way that people talk about psilocybin, which is like mushrooms. For people that's the lay, it's almost like it gives the brain a hard reset. It's like the defrag button, and it sort of resets it. So I'm excited about that as well. And for me, again, I'm just one of those people. I'm just curious because of the work that I do. I'm willing to expose myself to anything. Could care less about whatever sort of stereotype someone wants to play. For me, that's their own trap. It's not my trap. Sure. They can lay that for themselves until they get to the other side and they're like, maybe shouldn't I, damn it, I shouldn't have laid that trap. It's like what your mentor said to you, the murderer lives within. and you had said you were murdering so many other people's self-esteem or their dreams in some ways. And that's what people do online with the commentary, and everyone's got an opinion on stuff. And what are you doing? All you're doing is like, it's a self-expression of a bunch of different pain that you got going inside of you.
The bottom line is that we all have to recognize a very simple place of compassion is this: everybody's trying to feel better.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you get to that,
that's such a great way of saying it.
You suddenly look at people and you go, yeah, he's a dick, but he's trying to feel better. And shitting on you makes him feel better.
Yeah.
For a moment.
Yeah.
And we've all got these judgments about different things, whether it's psychedelics, whether it's microdosing, which is phenomenal research on microdosing of lysergic acid, LSD for depression, hard reset of the brain, as you said, the psilocybin therapy, MDMA, DMZ, all of those things. They're amazing. But, I've done all those processes, and I did many of them 30 odd years ago. And people are like, they thought I was a wacky doodles back in those days.
Sure.
But I was also having colonics and going on green fast, when people had never even heard of those things. But the point for me was, like everybody else, I wanted to feel better. And I knew I was capable of much more. I'd been on my spiritual journey. I traveled the world with all these different spiritual masters. I studied psychology. I studied quantum physics. I studied all these plant medicines and all these kinds of things. And I was wacky doodles as far as people were concerned. But my ability to understand and it's what you and I share, this deep curiosity that is, I believe is actually, and I've developed a whole show on it, that I believe the cure to the world is curiosity. My new show is called Curiosity Bites, because I believe it's the cure to everything. If anything you look at and you judge it, if you shift to curiosity, people are telling me we need love. No, we don't. We need greater communication. No, we don't. Those things we do need, but not first. Mm-hmm. You can't get to them without curiosity. Think about when you fell in love. You fell in love because you were curious about a person. You became like you wanted to know everything about them. You stayed up all night and talked to them till 5 a.m, went home, got half an hour sleep, called them and asked them some more questions. Because curiosity is the precursor to love. It is the precursor to excellence. It's what you and I do. When we're sitting down with the people we work with, they go, nobody's ever asked me that before. Yeah. Don't you hear that all the time, Todd?
Yeah.
I do. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Because I'm deeply curious about you, because I believe that you're not the shell that you're selling to yourself or to the world. And what's magnificent is below that, and I can only get to that through deep curiosity. So it's powerful, and it allows us to drop away the judgments and embrace things like you're saying, psilocybin, MDMA, or psychedelic therapy, or whatever it might be. But again, please understand that you need a guide. Don't go taking a bunch of shit.
Yeah. That's not what we're talking about.
Partying.
No.
So we want to make that very clear. Yeah. This is about understanding it's a side-by-side support system for growth, development, therapy, whatever term you want to use.
Excellent.
Right? And it's not a party thing. You want to party with it, that's fine, but it's a different outcome. Yeah. Right? You can drive your Ferrari at 20 miles an hour and enjoy it. Yeah. You can drive your Ferrari at 400 miles an hour and just to show off, and that's fine too. But one is not the same as the other. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So it's a similar vehicle, but you can do it for very different reasons, and it's really important that we grasp that. Yeah. But you and I could probably go on for about another 6 or 7 hours, at least.
Easily.
However, for now, and I say that, before we finish up, I want you to, if you would, I'm going to ask you to tell people where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources you have. But before that, I would love for you to just leave our viewers, our listeners, with a single piece of practical guidance that you would ask them to go do, preferably within the next 24 hours, in order to have them land what it is that you've been sharing with us.
Ooh. One thing that I sort of remind people of is that human beings are naturally conditioned to seek safety. That's truly our root form, is we're constantly conditioned to seek safety. And so when you know that that's just a fundamental hard coding of how we work, when you bump up against those instances, those internal sensations of wanting to seek safety, all that is a signal that there's actually a major opportunity that's on the other side of that sensation. So to continue to push through that, because again, you're going to become more valuable. You're going to see what you're made of. And most people are trying to make themselves perfect, have all of the skills already developed before they go out and find the situations and the circumstances, as opposed to my experience. And when you unpack the biography of clients of mine or other successful people, it's a recurring theme is they constantly found themselves in tougher and tougher situations or circumstances or new ones that they would question whether or not they had the ability to perform, but they still stuck it out and they found their new capability. So I say that because in the next 24 hours, if you find yourself pulling back and pulling away from saying something, doing something, I would, it's the classic Seinfeld episode, Opposite George. George decided to do everything that was the opposite of whatever his instinct was. And he ended up living in this, like, he was wearing velvet. He was approaching, other women, and he started living his best life kind of thing. But in those moments where you find yourself pulling away and stuff, like me, as I'll give myself as an example, just to be transparent, is that I'm not in a relationship with my wife. I wouldn't typically lean into saying, I love you and things like that. That's just not that wouldn't be my typical, love language kind of thing. But when I notice myself thinking it, I really love Valerie, I lean into it right away and I say it. I love you, Val. Because I don't want to get into the circular freaking thing in my head where I'm like, oh, well, I don't need to say it. She knows it kind of thing. Like it's just crazy, the chatter that goes on up there. I practice the same thing that I actually train athletes on, which is to trust the instinct of the act that you want to take. So it's really the reason that some hockey players can't execute the pass that they should when they're breaking out of their defensive zone and passing the puck up to the left wing or the right wing or the center, doesn't matter, is because they overthink it. They actually had the instinct to pass the puck, but then they waited another instant longer. The absolute best, the guys who are getting paid 4 times more than they are, despite the fact that they have the same skill set as those guys, they actually they make the pass. They instinctually just do it. So to lean into those instincts, when you want to say something, when you want to do something, do it. Like, say it. So if you're in this can come down to, like, if you're at the coffee shop and you notice that the person behind the counter has a pair of, like, really nice glasses, say that. Don't fall into the trap of, I'm an introvert or whatever, I'm shy. Just like say it. Just like, oh, I really like your glasses. There's nothing creepy about that. I say it to people all the time. I think I'm world class at complimenting because I love telling people all of that, because it can change. I mean, you can see people start levitating in their shoes just because someone noticed something about them. And to your point, you would know this. What's one of the things that is a fundamental poison that sort of seeps into most people's lives? It's this. Most people don't feel like they're seen. Most people don't feel like they're seen, that they're noticed. And when you're that one person who actively, like, I love being the person that walks on the planet who's actively seeking out ways that I can compliment, say hi to someone. Wow, I really like your dress, really like your shoes. Man, I'm like, just random comments. And whether they want to feel uncomfortable, that's on them. I'm not going to put everyone on the psychologist's couch and try to, like, give them therapy, because it's coming from a good place. So find that instinct and say it. Do it.
I think that's a great piece of practical advice. I encourage people all the time to say the thing, have the difficult conversation. And difficult doesn't mean confrontive. Often it's difficult because you are uncomfortable having it. Like you said, saying I love you may be very uncomfortable, but it actually may be the thing that saves your freaking marriage.
Sure.
Right? And so and I fully agree with you that human beings are wired for security and safety, and the ego mind evaluates same with safe. Therefore, if it's the same and I do the same, I'll be safe. And what you have to do is you have to embrace different to expand safe. Mm-hmm. Think about that. You have to embrace different to expand safe.
That's great.
Because if you didn't, you'd still be wearing a diaper at 45 and living in your mom's house and having her feed you. You had to expand into your discomfort to make your comfort zone bigger. And that's how you become safer in a big, 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 big world. And that's what allows you and I to do the work that we do and love it. So thank you for that.
Those are some great nuggets right there. Expanding into your discomfort so you can find more safety, or expanding into, what was the one that you said before that? Expanding into your, not sameness. Sameness
So we think that same and safe are equivalents, and they're not. But the ego mind says they are. So the only way to expand what is safe is to step into the uncertainty, to step into the vastness of that. And then what happens is your safety becomes bigger.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
This is great, buddy.
Thank you, mate. Please tell our listeners, our viewers, where they can find out more about you, all the wonderful resources that you have, and how they can find out more about your book and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, my home base on the interwebs is toddherman.me, so toddherman.me. So links to like social, all the different kind of programs and tools that we've got available for people in kind of, corporate and sports worlds and everything else is all right there. And ping me, tag me, reach out. Love to hear from people.
Fabulous. Well, again, this has been a pleasure and honor, my friend. Thank you so much. It's been awesome having you here. I hope you'll stay with us to the end.
You bet.
And for you, dear listener, remember you can hang out with other conscious leaders and chat about this episode or any past episodes by going to our Facebook or LinkedIn groups. Just simply look for the Leadership and Loyalty podcast. And when you're ready to develop the leadership and loyalty inside of your organization, and come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com. And to find out how you can hire me, Dov Barron, as a speaker or strategist for you personally or for your organization, you can go to fullmontyleadership.com/consulting or fullmontyleadership.com/speaking, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, because you can't outsource authenticity. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Until next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about how being safe is actually being trapped. Stay curious about how to expand your reality to step into the discomfort that will bring you an expansive reality about who you truly are and the amazing leader that you can be. Remember, leadership is by example. I'm Dov Barron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.